Vande Mataram, dear students. I Vishal Mishra going to teach you lesson number 6, part 2. Part 1 we had studied in previous video, and now we are going to study. We are going to know, we are going to learn about second and third part. Jody gave himself over to thoughts of the fawn. They passed the abandoned clearing. He said, "Cut to the north millwheel. It was up here that Paw got bitten by the snake and killed the dog, and I saw the fawn." In first part, we have studied that Jody had started his journey with millwheel, and in second part, Jody is going with millwheel, and he is saying to millwheel to go to the north direction, and look into the direction. Jody is saying to millwheel that it is the same place where Paw was got bitten by the snake and killed the dog, and I saw the fawn. Suddenly Jody was unwilling to have millwheel with him. If the fawn was dead or could not be found, he could not have his disappointment seen. And if the fawn was there, the meeting would be so lovely and so secret that he could not endure to share it. Now Jody is thinking that it would be very well if he had come alone in absence of millwheel, and if the fawn was dead or could not be found, he could not have his disappointment. And if the fawn was there, then the meeting would be so lovely and so secret that he could not endure to share it. He said, "It is not for now, but the scrub is very thick for a horse." Getting the intention of Jody, millwheel made understand to the boy and said he was afraid to leave him, because suppose if he got lost or if he got bitten by the snake too. "I'll take care," Jody said. "I'll take care. It might take me long time to find the fawn." Means he will be able to find that fawn very soon. If he's wandered, leave me off right here. Means he want to now start his journey alone without millwheel. Alright, but you take it easy now. You know north here and east. Again, millwheel is making understand Jody and saying he won't be able to understand, he want to be able to know the direction properly, that which direction is east and which is north. There and there, that tall pine makes a bearing. So long, millwheel, I am obliged." Indicating towards a tall pine tree, Jody is making millwheel understand that he can use that tall pine tree as a compass to identify directions. He waited for the sound of the hooves to end, then cut to the right. Waiting for the sound of hooves of that fawn, he went to the right direction. The scrub was still, only his own crackling of twigs sounded across the silence. It was very silent there, but the crackling of twigs make sound or broke that silence. Now again he wandered for an instant, as he had mistaken his directions. Then a buzzard rose in front of him and flapped into the air. He came into the clearing under the oaks. Buzzards sat in a circle around the carcass of the dog. As Jody and Millwheel were the same place where that dog was killed, and it is because there were few buzzards who were eating the flesh of that dead dog. The buzzards turned their heads on their long scrawny necks and hissed at him. He threw his bow at them, and they flew into the adjacent tree. The sand showed large cat prints, but the big cats killed fresh, and they had left the dog to the carrion birds. Jody and Millwheel saw on the sand that there were footprints of few cats of jungle. He patted the grass at the place where he had seen the fawn. It did not seem possible that it was only yesterday. Means now Jody is Jody is making place on the side of the grass, and as he is seeing that who has that fawn, it did not seem possible that it was only yesterday. He is saying that it is not possible that he would be only here on yesterday. There was no sound. The fawn was not there. He circled the clearing. There was no sound, no sign. The buzzards clacked their wings, impatient to return to their business. And as they passed from that place, the buzzards came again on that their business, means they started to again eating flesh. They again returned on the same place where where they had hunted that doe, and studying the sand for the small hoofprints, because before that night the rain had washed away all tracks except those of cats and buzzards, and it is because they were unable to find out that where the hoops of that doe was, and they were unable to find the exact place where they had killed the doe. So dear students, it was part 2, and now let's read part 3. Moving directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wandering motion and shook him through with the stares of its liquid eyes. Now they had found that fawn, and they are going very close to that fawn. It was querying. It made no effort to rise or run. It was very small. It is because it was unable to run or rise. Jody could not trust himself to move. Jody was going closer and closer to it. He whispered, "It's me." And going very closer to that fawn, Jody whispered that it is me. The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. As Jody was going very close to it, the fawn lifted its nose to scent him, and as the fawn got that Jody is going very closer to him, he started to move. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. Means as Jody put his arm around its body, it shivered a little bit, but it did not stir. It did not run. He stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer. Means Jody was thinking. Jody was lifting that fawn very gently as it is as a china deer, and he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Jody lifted very gently that fawn in his lap, and its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arms. Jody was moving towards the Mr. Wheel, taking that fawn in his lap. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. Jody was afraid that after seeing the dead body of its mother, that fawn can kick and can bleed. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his arm with freedom. When Jody was moving towards toward the Mr. Wheel, Jody was facing difficulty with the burden of the fawn, because the fawn's leg caught in the bushes and he was unable to lift his arm freedom. He tried to shield its face from picking vines. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to the rest and set the fawn down to the dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. When Jody was moving towards his home, he was facing difficulty because there were many bushes, and in those bushes the fawn's legs were getting cut again and again. It is because he was facing problem, and slowly he had come on the road of his home. He stopped to rest, and he set the fawn down on its dangling legs. The fawn looked at Jody and it bleated. He said, "Enchanted, I'll carry you after I get my breath." He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle. Jody Gods remembered that once his father had told him that a fawn would follow if it had been carried. So he started away slowly. The fawn stared after him, and the fawn was also following to Jody, as it was being carried by Jody from the jungle. Taking few steps toward Jody, the fawn cried piteously, and it was following to Jody because and now Jody wanted to fondle it. Jody wanted to cherish it, to make feel it that it is safe with Jody, and now it had not to worry about anything. To run and romp with it, to call to it, to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. Now he was very excited, he was very happy with that fawn, and that is why he was moving very happily. And as he walked without any effort, picking that fawn in his lap, his arm began to ache and he was forced to stop again. Picking that fawn, his arm began to ache, and now he was forced to stop again. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. He was allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. Means some distance Jody was carrying it in his lap, and some distance he was making the fawn to follow him. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. It was the month of June, so it was very hot day, and Jody was wet with sweat. It had rained before that night, so it was clear as the water. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom, with the fawn walking behind him. Means Jody was thinking that he go to the Penny, means his father's bedroom, directly, and the fawn would come after chasing him. But at the steps, the fawn barked and refused to climb them. He picked it up when Jody was to enter in his father's room. The fawn stopped there, and it is because Jody picked it up and went to his father's room. Penny lay with closed eyes. Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as fawns. He said, "I am glad you find him." As Jody entered in his father's room, Jody called to his papa and he asked to see at him. Penny turned his head and seeing his boy in front of him, in his eyes, he saw that his boy is very happy and his eyes are as bright as the fawn's eyes are. Means Jody's eyes were shining in happiness. Jody then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen shelf. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It bottled it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. After showing that fawn to his father, Jody thought that it would be hungry, so he went to the kitchen and taking milk from the pan into a small gourd, he held it out to the fawn. But suddenly, spilling the milk, Jody saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. As the fawn was unable to drink milk from that gourd, Jody tried another method to feed that fawn. He dipped his finger in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him, as it was saying to do the same. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. It is how the fawn was getting fed by Jody. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. As long as he had his finger below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flicked back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. Dipping fingers in milk and putting it in fawn's mouth, Jody fed the fawn, and the fawn was content. And after that, the fawn closed its eye dreamily. It was excited to feel its tongue against his hand, and now its small tail flicked back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling.